Hello.
Welcome back.
This is the Downbelow RPG discussion of what we are doing with this game. I'm Ian.
I'm Steve.
And what we're telling you about today is conspiracies and how to use them.
Specifically, we're talking about how they interact with some of the behind-the-scenes GM-facing mechanics of the game.
And how the GMs can integrate players into them, whether as discoverers of or even members of the conspiracies.
So we talked about resource tracks a while ago, and the simplest way to mechanically implement a conspiracy is with an ongoing secrecy track. Decide for yourself at the start of the adventure, start of the session, when you're writing it down, what is revealed when the secrecy hits certain levels, counting down, or alternately use it as a tension level as it goes up. When the secrecy track hits a certain level, it triggers a response. Some examples of this would be if it's a countdown to a conspiracy to, lace a corn syrup supply with hallucinogenic drugs to ensure a compliant population. At the first level of secrecy, you might reveal that there are unlicensed chemicals going into the corn syrup, but really everything seems fine. But at a lower level of conspiracy, you might reveal that the chemicals are coming directly from a pharmaceutical plant that doesn't appear officially on the books, and we need to check that out.
Basically, the two major things are, one, secrecy, and two, time. Conspiracies have major what goes on when problems, because they tend to be limited in the number of people who are in the know, and so they tend to have very specific timetables.
Frankly, every conspiracy is incredibly time-intensive, because either a lot has to happen in a very short or very tightly controlled sense of time, or things are planned out over a very long but still very, very important period of time.
So time is something that you should keep track of as it goes past, so that you can have certain events happen, and so that you can figure out what can be stumbled upon.
If the PCs are not being directly involved, everything should happen on schedule, but that means you need to know what the schedule is.
And you should have that schedule set up so that you can note the events that will happen if nothing has changed that will affect the PCs, especially. Yep. Speaking of what will affect the PCs, if the PCs are taking on the role of discovering the conspiracy, which is one of the more typical you are solving a mystery sorts of story that is fun and easy to run.
Sidebar, Your Honor. We've talked about conspiracies and mysteries here. I just want to note that a mystery is not a conspiracy, and not all mysteries need to be conspiracies.
But conspiracies make good mysteries.
And a conspiracy should involve multiple mysteries linked together.
Yes. That being said, if the players are doing a mystery story taking on the role of discovering the conspiracy, then you should use failure to reveal the conspiracy more than success.
Yep. What do you mean by that?
If the players choose to succeed at actions, sure, they can get information if that's what they were going for. But maybe what they're going for with their successes is just to survive the current situation. And in that case, they're probably not using that success to get information. Also, information is not necessarily the main thing that they would get out of beating up some thugs. As we mentioned last week, if they're involved in a conspiracy that is powerful and deep enough, the thugs probably won't have any kind of identifying information at all.
Early on, the players may not know that they are in a conspiracy, and later on, they may not know who's connected to the next part of the conspiracy. This goes back to an issue with a lot of fantasy role-playing games, which is that long-distance vision, scrying, and omniscience spells are supposedly incredibly powerful. A sufficiently prepared GM, though, will actually have an answer for players based on what they actually ask, based on what they're actually specifically going for, as opposed to roll some dice, spill the beans, and hand the players the box text of the adventure to read themselves.
So in the case of this game, what do I mean by failure reveals information? I mean that failure is not only used to put the PCs into a newly perilous or even more perilous situation, it is also what drives the story forward, especially in this kind of mystery scenario.
Failing forward is very important.
When the players fail their objectives in the scene, they should automatically get clues as to why things are getting more dangerous, why things are getting worse. And not just the "you effed up," but also the "this is what makes what you did a screw-up. This is what makes it dangerous." And that should tie it into the conspiracy. So let's say they don't beat up the goons. They get captured and interrogated. The questions they're being asked in the interrogation should tell them something about what's going on.
Alternately, instead of, again, let's say that their goal is to escape without violence, well, when the goons pull out electrical arc pistols that don't match anything they've ever seen before and start shooting at them, that itself should raise questions.
So let's say they choose to fail and one of them gets knocked out by this. They should then be able to use those characteristic wounds from this weapon they've never seen before as a clue if they want to find out where the heck did these guys get those things.
Exactly.
And their research leads them to this conspiracy den in the internet where secret military technologies are discussed.
Narratively, this also encourages the players to be a bit more generous with their failures. A previous discussion asked the question, why would I ever choose to fail if I don't have to? We've sweetened the pot a little bit by saying that failures will recharge successes. We've talked about how behind the scenes you're requiring a certain number of failures because there are n plus 4 successes needed, where n is the total number of successes available to the players at this point. If, on the other hand, players start to associate failure with progress, they'll start voluntarily failing more, and you can actually loosen up your guidelines and just start tracking resources instead of having to track remaining successes and failures.
Because some of those resources should be doled out for failures.
Right.
The appropriate kind.
So,
information is one of the most appropriate kinds because when you get deeper into the crap is when you find things out. See also classic mystery character Sam Spade, who usually finds things out at the short end of a beating up. So, let's talk briefly before we finish about the other role players can have in the conspiracy, being in the conspiracy.
Yep.
The economy of favors in Downbelow means that players can easily get dragged into various conspiracies.
Conspiracies always need flunkies, always need messengers, often need leg breakers.
And so when there are various resources, secrecy and otherwise, that the players are contributing to with their successes in your behind-the-scenes track, then their failures causing that conspiracy to be more revealed is going to maybe let the players know that this conspiracy they're part of, maybe they knew they were part of a conspiracy, but it goes deeper than we thought.
Similarly, conspiracies don't always have to be bad, or rather don't always have to be obviously bad. There's entirely too much room for a conspiracy that is not only benign but helpful, but has to operate under the radar. We've been talking about players being involved in conspiracy as if the conspiracy is itself inherently unethical and immoral. What if there is a conspiracy to let's talk human rights. Let's talk survival. There's a conspiracy to get nutritious food into a chronically malnourished region under the watchful eye of the government that has no intention of feeding the oppressed population. Well, it's a conspiracy, and so there, revealing the conspiracy to the public would actually be damaging to the good of the area as opposed to beneficial to the players. You can use these things both ways.
And given the situation on Nuevo Paradiso, there can also be a conspiracy to evade the corporate control. So similarly, feeding people or getting them necessary supplies in the Downbelow economy often requires a conspiracy.
Yep.
But mainly when we use the word conspiracy, we're talking about something which has many levels, and it ultimately leads to something that is going to be in the dark because it's bad.
Right.
And the other stuff is collusion among people, but the word conspiracy, we're using it for these unethical, bad things that people will find out that either they're going on or, oops, I've been involved in this.
Exactly.
So thanks for listening to us once again, and please continue to fall through the cracks with us as we continue to discuss Downbelow.